In the heart of Barcelona, a building that has been rising from the ground since before the light bulb was invented, before the first skyscraper was even conceived, finally crossed into history. On February the 20th, 2026, workers hoisted the final arm of a 17-meter cross into the sky above the city. When it clicked into place, the Sagrada Familia officially became the tallest church on earth. 144 years of hammers, models, wars, fires, software, and stone had led to that single moment. So how do you finish a cathedral that has survived everything the modern world could throw at it? That is exactly what we are going to find out today with Terra Factor. Before we get into it, if you are new here and you enjoy watching some of the most extraordinary engineering and construction stories on the planet, hit that subscribe button right now and tap the bell. We cover projects that most channels never touch, and you do not want to miss what is coming next. Now, to understand why this completion matters so deeply, you have to go back to where it all started. Not with the man most people associate with this building, but with a bookseller. In 1866, a man named Joseph Maria Boccabella founded a religious association dedicated to Saint Joseph. After traveling to Rome and walking through the Vatican, he returned to Barcelona with a vision burning in his mind. He wanted to build something that would match the devotion of the old world. On March 19, 1882, workers placed the foundation stone in the Example district of Barcelona. The original architect designed something traditional, something safe. A standard neo-Gothic church that would have looked like dozens of others already standing across Europe. But within a year, he was gone, replaced by a relatively unknown 31-year-old who would go on to change architecture forever. Antoni Gaudí did not simply take over the project. He dismantled the original idea completely and rebuilt it from his imagination. He envisioned a basilica with 18 towers, each one representing a different figure from Christian scripture. The 12 apostles, the 4 evangelists, the Virgin Mary, and at the very top, Jesus Christ himself. But what made Gaudi truly unlike any architect before him was where he looked for inspiration. Not at other buildings, not at classical texts, but at nature. He studied how trees branch, how bones carry load, how seashells spiral upward in perfect geometry. He translated all of that into stone, concrete, and ceramic. His columns did not just stand straight. They branched like oak trees near the ceiling. His towers did not taper simply. They twisted upward the way a nautilus shell coils in the ocean. The building was going to tell the entire story of Christ through 3 massive facades: birth and life on one side, suffering and death on another, and resurrection and eternal glory at the entrance facing the city. Gaudi understood from the beginning that he would never see this finished. He reportedly said that his client, referring to God, was not in a hurry. But despite that acceptance, he gave himself completely to the project. By 1914, he had shut down every other commission in his life and moved directly onto the construction site. He was working 16-hour days, refining plaster models and running structural calculations with nothing but mathematics, physical intuition, and extraordinary patience. On November 30th, 1925, he stood and watched the first tower reach its finished height. It was the only tower he would ever see completed. On June 7th, 1926, Gaudi stepped back on a Barcelona street to avoid an oncoming tram, and was struck by a second one coming from the opposite direction. He fell and hit his head on the pavement. Because he had spent his final years living so simply, wearing worn-out clothes and carrying almost nothing, people passing by assumed he was a street beggar. Taxi drivers refused to take him to hospital. A police officer eventually transported him, but the doctors did not know who he was. By the time someone from the Sagrada Familia workshop arrived and recognized him, it was already too late. He died on June 10, 1926, just 15 days before his 74th birthday. Thousands of people lined the streets of Barcelona to watch his funeral procession pass. He was buried in the crypt beneath the very building he had devoted his life to. Construction carried on after his death, guided by the detailed models and drawings he had left behind. Then came the catastrophe that nearly ended everything. In July of 1936, 2 days after the Spanish Civil War began, a group of anarchists stormed the site. They burned Gaudi's workshop to the ground. They destroyed his plaster models, incinerated his drawings, smashed photographs, and even broke open the lid of his tomb. They returned with dynamite, prepared to bring down the nativity facade entirely. A government official intervened at the last second and stopped the detonation. But the damage was already severe. Most of Gaudi's detailed plans were ash. 12 people connected to the project were killed during the war years. The supervising architect died in 1938. When the war ended in 1939, the new team in charge spent an entire decade just trying to piece together what had been lost, gathering thousands of fragments of shattered plaster, matching broken edges like puzzle pieces with no picture on the box. And here is where this story becomes something that belongs to the 21st century as much as the 19th. For decades after the Civil War, completion seemed like a fantasy. The geometry Gaudi had designed was not just complex, it was in a category that had almost no precedent in architecture. His 36 interior columns each begin as one geometric shape at the base and transform into something entirely different as they rise. A hexagonal column becomes octagonal halfway up, then splits into branching supports near the ceiling. Each column carries a different rate of twist. Some rotate 15 degrees over their full height. Others rotate 30. These were not decorative decisions. Gaudi had worked out exactly how each twist and each branch would distribute the enormous weight pressing down from above. One column at the main crossing carries roughly 6,000 tons of load from the central tower. Instead of a single, massive pillar absorbing all of that force straight down, the column spreads it through branches, dividing the load across a wider foundation. The geometry is called a hyperbolic paraboloid. It curves in 2 directions at the same time. There are no flat surfaces, no right angles. When the models that contained the precise specifications for all of this were destroyed in the Civil War, the architects were left with photographs and fragments, enough to understand the overall shape, but not the exact numbers. The breakthrough arrived in the 1980s when an architect named Mark Burry introduced software originally developed to analyze the curved surfaces of aircraft wings. That software could take the incomplete data from surviving plaster fragments, calculate the missing geometries, and verify whether the reconstructed shapes would actually hold the weight of the building. That solved the design problem. But there was still the construction problem. Each column requires somewhere between 800 and 1,200 individual stone blocks, every single one cut to a unique curved shape that fits together with the block above it and the block below it at millimeter precision. Human carvers working with hand tools could spend weeks on a single block. and across 1,000 blocks, the accumulated errors would make the column drift far enough offline that the vault above simply would not connect. A Dutch engineering team built a CNC milling machine specifically for this project. It uses a robotic arm capable of moving across a stone surface in 7 axes simultaneously, cutting complex curved geometry to a precision of 1/10 of a millimeter. Human hands with traditional tools work within 2 to 3 millimeters of error. When you are stacking 1,200 blocks over 20 meters, that difference determines whether the ceiling connects or collapses. The machine cut in 6 hours what a master carver needed 3 weeks to produce. That combination of aeronautical stress software and robotic stone cutting made what once seemed impossible finally achievable. The full structure now stands at 172.5 meters, taller than St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, and nearly twice the height of Big Ben in London. That figure is not an accident. Gaudi deliberately designed the tower to stand 1 meter shorter than the highest natural point in Barcelona, the Montjuic Hill. He believed that human construction should never claim to surpass the work of nature. Tourism has been funding all of it. In 2024 alone, 4.9 million people paid to visit the Basilica. That is more visitors than the Statue of Liberty and the Colosseum in Rome each received in the same year. Those tickets generated 44.7 million euros that went directly into construction. The building cannot accept government money or bank loans because of its status as an expiatory temple. Every crane movement, every stone block, every robotic cut has been paid for by the people who walked through the doors. The year 2026 carries special weight beyond just the cross being installed. It marks the centenary of Gaudi's death. The Sagrada Familia Foundation has organized a full calendar of commemorative events, beginning with a solemn Mass on June 10th and ending with the lighting of the Nativity facade in December. Pope Leo XIV is expected to visit during 2026, which would be the first papal presence at the Basilica since Pope Benedict XVI consecrated it back in November of 2010. Construction on the glory facade vertical walls began in June of 2025, and 3 artists are currently carving sculptures for the Chapel of the Assumption. There are actually 3 finish lines ahead. The first is 2026, when the Tower of Jesus Christ is blessed and complete, making this the symbolic realization of everything Gaudi imagined. The second is 2033, when all 18 towers will stand, the glory facade walls will be in place, and the final major structural stone will be laid, 151 years after construction began. The third is 2035, when the decorative work on the glory facade is finished and the craftspeople set down their tools for the very last time. After that, the cranes come down, the scaffolding disappears, and Barcelona will see for the first time what this building actually looks like, unobstructed against the sky. Architects, stone carvers, and engineers working on this project today grew up knowing they might spend their entire careers on a single building. Some of them are the grandchildren of workers who laid stone here decades ago. There is something almost impossible to describe about a project that spans human generations like a slow river, carrying the same vision forward across completely different worlds. 144 years ago, a group of workers set a foundation stone in a district of Barcelona that barely existed. They had no computers, no CNC machines, no aeronautical stress analysis software. What they had was a vision from a man who studied shells and bones and trees and translated all of it into something the world had never seen. That vision survived civil war, fires, pandemics, and the death of almost everyone who originally understood it. And now it is nearly finished. That is worth thinking about. When the last stone is placed and the last crane rolls away, will it have been worth 151 years? When you look at those towers rising over Barcelona, do you think Gaudí would recognize what we built in his name and call it complete? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you want to keep exploring stories like this one, stories about the buildings, the engineering projects, and the human decisions that quietly reshape the world we live in, subscribe to Terra Factor and hit the notification bell. We will see you in the next one.